The Krathaks have never been defeated. They were defeated today, Thelana said. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Valaris Prime. The galaxy was different now, changed in ways both subtle and obvious. Ambassador Sora stood in the command center on Earth, looking at a holographic map of known space. Small markers indicated different species, different worlds, different problems. But what caught her attention was something new. A cluster of green markers all connected by communication lines, the Frontier Defense Initiative. Humanity's answer to the Galactic Council's inaction. How many members now? Asked General Park, walking up beside her. 5 species, Sora replied. The Valerians, of course. They were first. Then the Koresh, a mining species that the Council ignored when pirates started raiding their convoys. The Telvine, whose colony was threatened by a meteor storm. The Council said it was too expensive to intervene. And the Mashara and the Fenric, both non-Council species that have been asking for help for years. And they all trust us? Sora smiled slightly. They don't trust us, but they trust that we'll answer when they call. That's more than the Council ever gave them. The Frontier Defense Initiative had started small. Just a proposal, a simple idea. What if there was an organization that actually responded to distress calls? What if there was a group that protected those who couldn't protect themselves? Not for profit, not for political gain. Just because it was right. The Council had laughed at the idea, called it naive, impossible, unsustainable. But within 3 months, 5 species had joined. Within 6 months, FDI ships were patrolling trade routes that the Council considered unimportant. They were responding to emergencies that the Council said were not strategic priorities. And they were making a difference on the FDI station Unity 1. Orbiting the Valerian homeworld, Major Nari walked through the corridors. She had been promoted after Valaris Prime. Given command of the 1st Joint Human-Alien Rapid Response Team, it was an honor. It was also a massive responsibility. Her unit was unique. 40 human Marines trained and experienced. 20 Valerian medics learning to overcome their peaceful nature to work in war zones. 15 Koresh engineers, experts at repairing anything under any conditions. And a handful of specialists from the other member species. They trained together. Ate together. Learned each other's languages and customs. It wasn't always easy. Humans were aggressive. Valerians were sensitive. Koresh were stubborn. Telvine were proud. Mashara were secretive. Fenric were impulsive, but they were learning to work together. Nari found Yuna in the medical bay. The Valerian had changed since they first met. She was no longer the frightened civilian huddling behind human guns. She had spent 6 months working with human medics, learning trauma medicine, studying how to treat combat injuries. She still hated violence. She always would. But she understood it now, understood its necessity, and she had chosen to be part of the solution. Major Nari, Yuna said, looking up from her medical supplies. Are we really deploying tomorrow? That's the plan. We received a distress call from a mining colony in the Kashari sector. Pirates. The colony has no defenses and the Council has refused to send help. Yuna's expression was worried. Will there be fighting? Probably. Pirates don't usually surrender peacefully. And you'll be careful. Nari smiled. Always am. But that's what you're here for, right? To patch me up when I'm not careful enough? Yuna smiled back, though it was shaky. I will do my best. Though I hope I don't need to. In another part of the station, Captain Taeyang was meeting with the other ship commanders. The FDI had grown its fleet. They now had 12 ships. 8 were human vessels. 4 were from other member species, modified and upgraded with human weapons and shields. It wasn't much compared to the massive fleets of the Council species, but it was enough. Commander Hyunwoo, now promoted to Admiral and serving as FDI's chief military officer, was briefing the group. The Kashari colony is home to about 50,000 civilians. The pirate fleet consists of 6 ships, small raiders, not military vessels, but armed enough to threaten an undefended colony. One of the Koresh commanders, a female named Gresh, spoke up. What's the Council's position? The usual. They're monitoring the situation, which means they're doing nothing. So we do something, said another human captain, Commander Daehyun of the FDI Vessel Protector. We jump in, eliminate the pirate threat, and jump out. Standard operation. Not quite, Hyunwoo corrected. This time we're going to do something different. We're going to offer the pirates a choice. Surrender or be destroyed. If they surrender, we turn them over to the nearest council authority for prosecution. The room was quiet. That was new. At Valaris Prime, humans had fought until the enemy retreated. They hadn't offered terms. Hadn't given the Krythax a choice. "Sir, why the change?" asked Lieutenant Do-hyun, now serving as Taeyang's executive officer. "Because the Krythax were monsters," Hyunwoo said simply. "They were consuming civilizations. They couldn't be reasoned with. But pirates are different. They're criminals, yes, but they're still people. If we can stop them without killing them, we should try." Taeyang nodded. "The goal is to save lives. All lives, when possible. We're not executioners. We're protectors. There's a difference." The fleet departed Unity 1 the next morning. 12 ships, crew members from 6 different species, all united by a single purpose: to help those who needed it. In the Galactic Council chambers, the members were having another meeting. They had been having a lot of meetings lately, all about the same topic: humanity and the FDI. "They're undermining our authority," Kelshawn was saying. "Every time they respond to a crisis we've chosen not to intervene in, they make us look weak, uncaring." "Perhaps that's because we are uncaring," said a new voice. It was Council Member Thelanos. He had been quiet for months, but now he spoke with conviction. "The humans have responded to 14 emergencies in the past 6 months. 14 situations where people called for help and we said no, and in every case the humans saved lives." "At what cost?" Pelgorth demanded. "Their casualty rates are still high. Their methods are still violent. They're spreading their culture of warfare across the galaxy. They're spreading a culture of action," Thelanos countered. "And perhaps that's what we need. We've become so focused on maintaining peace that we've forgotten what we're supposed to be keeping the peace for. We've forgotten that the point of civilization is to protect the weak, not just to protect ourselves." The chamber erupted in argument. Some council members agreed with Thelanos. Others were horrified by his suggestion. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Pelgorth called for order. "We need to make a decision. Do we formally oppose the FDI? Do we sanction them? Or do we acknowledge their right to exist? Or," suggested Krental quietly, "we could join them." The chamber went silent. The idea was radical. The Galactic Council working with the FDI? 2 organizations with completely different philosophies? "Impossible," Kelshawn said. "We would never agree on anything." "Perhaps that's good," Krental said. "Perhaps we need someone to disagree with us. Someone to challenge our decisions. Someone to remind us that sometimes action is better than debate." Ambassador Sora was not present for this debate. She was on Unity 1, watching the FDI fleet prepare for their mission. But she received a message from Minho, who was monitoring the council session. "They're considering cooperation," the message said. "Not membership, not surrender, but cooperation." "It's more than I expected," Sora smiled. It was progress. Slow progress, but progress nonetheless. The FDI fleet arrived at the Kashari colony. Just as intelligence reported, 6 pirate ships were in orbit, threatening the mining platforms below. The pirates had demanded supplies, credits, and valuable ore. If they didn't get them, they threatened to start destroying the platforms, killing the workers. Captain Taeyang opened a communication channel to the pirate fleet. "Attention pirate vessels. This is Captain Taeyang of the Frontier Defense Initiative. You are threatening civilian targets. You have one chance to surrender, power down your weapons, and prepare to be boarded. If you comply, you will be turned over to the proper authorities for trial. If you don't comply, we will disable your ships by force." There was a long pause. Then the pirate leader responded. His voice was uncertain. "FDI, you're the humans, the ones who fought the Krythax. We are. And we're the ones giving you this one chance to live. What's it going to be?" Another pause. "Longer this time?" Then one by one the pirate ships powered down their weapons. Their shields dropped. They surrendered without firing a shot. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Do-hyun looked surprised. "They just gave up," Taeyang nodded. "They know our reputation. They know we can destroy them if we want to, but they also know we'd rather not. That makes us more frightening than if we were just bloodthirsty, because they can't predict us, can't manipulate us." The pirates were taken into custody. The colony was secured. Medical supplies and repair equipment were offloaded from the FDI ships. And just like that, the crisis was over. No shots fired. No lives lost. Major Nari stood on the mining platform, watching her team help the colony workers repair damaged equipment. Human Marines worked alongside Koresh engineers. Valerian medics treated minor injuries. It was exactly what the FDI was meant to be. Different species working together for a sea. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with tension. Every member was present, their holographic forms flickering in the dim light. They were all watching the same thing. A live feed from Valaris Prime. A feed that showed something none of them had ever witnessed before. Humans at war. Council member Thelanas, the logical Peltharian, was taking notes. He always took notes. It was his nature to document everything, to analyze, to understand, but what he was seeing challenged his understanding of warfare. "They've deployed kinetic weapons," he said, his voice clinical. "Primitive but effective. The Krythax bioships have no defense against solid matter moving at such velocities." Another council member, a Vorish named Kelshan, made a sound of disgust. "Look at the destruction. They're not trying to disable those ships. They're trying to obliterate them. Complete annihilation." "That's the point of war," said a third voice. It was Ambassador Sora. She had returned to the council chambers as an observer. She was not allowed to speak in official sessions, but she could watch, and she could comment quietly to those around her. Kelshan turned to her. "Your species takes war too far. Look at the ground battle. Your soldiers are using explosive projectiles, weapons designed to maximize casualties. It's barbaric." Sora looked at the screen. She could see Lieutenant Nari and her Marines fighting. She could see the Krythax warriors dying by the dozens. She could also see the Valerian civilians huddled behind the human defensive line, alive because of that violence. "It's effective," Sora said calmly. "The Valerians are still breathing. That's all that matters." Council Leader Pelgorth raised his wing for silence. "We need to analyze this situation objectively. The humans have been engaged with the Krythax for 72 hours. What are the results?" Thelanas consulted his data. Krythax losses, 180 bioships destroyed. Approximately 2 million warrior forms eliminated on the ground. 3 hive structures collapsed. The Krythax have begun withdrawing forces from 2 continents. And human losses? 847 dead, 2,340 wounded. 1 ship, the Guardian, is heavily damaged but still operational. They've lost 40% of their dropships and 20% of their ground armor. The chamber was silent. Those were heavy losses. For most species, such casualties would be devastating, unacceptable, a reason to retreat. But the humans weren't retreating. "They're continuing the assault," Thelanas noted. "Despite their losses, they're pushing forward. Their Marines on the ground have expanded the defensive perimeter by 30 kilometers. They're actively hunting Krythax warrior forms now. Not just defending, attacking." Krental, the oldest council member, shook his head. "This is what I feared. They don't know when to stop. They'll fight until everyone is dead, theirs and the enemy's both. Or until the enemy stops fighting," Sora said quietly. On the screen, the space battle continued. The Indomitable was firing on a massive bioship, one of the largest in the Krythax fleet. The bioship was trying to regenerate faster than the humans could damage it. But human weapons were relentless. Round after round slammed into the bioship's core. Finally, something critical was hit. The bioship spasmed and went still, drifting in space like a dead whale. The other Krythax bioships saw this. They saw their largest ship destroyed. They saw the human vessels, smaller but deadlier, cutting through their fleet. And for the first time in their species' history, the Krythax felt something new. Feared junior diplomat Minho had been silent until now. He was humanity's representative to the council, younger and less experienced than Ambassador Sora. But he understood his people. He understood what was happening. "You're missing the point," he said suddenly. All eyes turned to him. "You're so focused on the violence that you're not seeing what else is happening." "Enlighten us," Pelgorth said, his tone suggesting he didn't expect to be enlightened at all. Minho pulled up different feeds on his tablet. "Look here. Human medical teams have landed on the surface. They're not just defending the Valerians, they're treating them, providing food, water, shelter. And look here." He changed the image. "Human engineers are working to disable the cocoon structures without killing the Valerians trapped inside. They're not just soldiers, they're rescuers." "They're still killing on a massive scale," Kelshan protested. "Yes," Minho agreed. Because the Krithax won't stop any other way. But the moment the Krithax retreat, the moment the threat is gone, humans will stop fighting and start healing. That's what you don't understand about us. We're capable of great violence, but we're also capable of great compassion. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Thelanas tilted his head. Your species is a contradiction. You claim to value life, yet you take it so easily. We value innocent life, Minho corrected. The Valerians are innocent. The Krithax are predators who consume civilizations. There's a difference. We protect the first and stop the second, however we need to. The council members looked at each other. None of them had a response to that. On Valaris Prime, the battle was entering its 6th day. Lieutenant Nari had not slept in 40 hours. None of her Marines had. They were running on stimulants and pure determination, but they were still fighting. The Krithax had changed tactics. They had stopped charging the human lines directly. Instead, they were trying to flank to find weak points. But human doctrine had been developed over thousands of years of warfare. There were no weak points. Every position was supported by two others. Every Marine could see their partner's blind spot. Yuna, the Valerian who had spoken to Nari on the first day, was now helping the human medics. She couldn't fight. Her species didn't understand violence, but she could comfort the wounded Valerians who had been rescued from the cocoons. She could translate. She could help. She watched the human soldiers with a mixture of awe and horror. They moved like machines, precise and efficient. But when they spoke to the Valerian civilians, they were gentle, kind. One Marine, a large man named Jackson, was currently letting Valerian children touch his armor. They were fascinated by it. He was smiling, making jokes, trying to distract them from the nightmare around them. How can they be both? Yuna asked one of the human medics. How can they be so violent and so gentle at the same time? The medic, a woman named Dr. Kim, looked up from her work. Because we understand that violence has a purpose. It's not random. It's not for pleasure. It's a tool we use to protect people like you. When the fighting stops, we put the tool away. Simple as that. But doesn't it change you? Doesn't the killing affect you? Dr. Kim was quiet for a moment. Yes, it does. Our soldiers will have nightmares about this for years. Some will need therapy. Some will never fully recover. But they do it anyway. Because someone has to. Because if good people don't fight evil, evil wins. And we can't let that happen. In orbit, Captain Taiyang was receiving reports from all fronts. The battle was turning in humanity's favor, but slowly. Too slowly. The Krithax kept sending more forces. Where they were coming from, he didn't know. But they seemed endless. Sir, sensors are detecting something, Lieutenant Doyun said suddenly. Large contact. Coming out of the far side of the planet. Taeyang felt his heart sink. Another bioship? Bigger. Much bigger. It's the size of a small moon, sir. The view screen shifted. Everyone on the bridge stared. It was the Krithax Queen, the source of the swarm. A massive, pulsating creature that was part ship, part living thing, part mobile hive. Thousands of smaller bioships orbited around it like children around a mother. This was what had been directing the entire invasion. And it was retreating. Do-hyun checked his sensors again. Sir, it's moving away from the planet. All Krithax forces are pulling back. They're regrouping around the Queen. Taeyang couldn't believe it. They're running? It appears so, sir. The bridge erupted in cheers. After 6 days of constant battle, the Krithax were retreating. They had never retreated before in all their history. But they were retreating from humans. Taeyang opened a channel to all human forces. All ships, all Marines, cease fire unless directly engaged. Let them go. Our mission was to protect the Valerians, not to chase the Krithax across the galaxy. On the ground, Nari received the order. She lowered her rifle. Around her, her Marines did the same. They watched as the Krithax warriors pulled back, disappearing into the hive structures. The hive structures themselves began to crumble, breaking apart as the Krithax biomass withdrew. The Valerians realized what was happening. The attack was over. They had survived. They began to cry, not in fear this time, in relief and joy. They hugged each other. They hugged the human soldiers who stood stiffly in their armor, not quite sure how to respond to this level of affection. Yuna found Nari again. You did it. You saved us. Nari looked at her. The Marine's face was covered in sweat and grime. Her armor was scorched and dented, but she smiled. It was a tired smile. A sad smile, but genuine. We did our job, Nari said. That's all. Your job is saving strangers? Yuna asked. Our job is helping those who need it. Yes. In the council chambers, the members watched the Krythax fleet flee. They watched the Queen's massive form jump to faster-than-light travel, taking her swarm with her. They watched the humans hold their fire, letting the enemy escape rather than pursuing. Pelgoroth spoke first. They won. Impossible, Kelshan whispered. Nari looked at her. Then we die trying. But we die knowing we did the right thing. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valaris system. For a moment, everyone on the bridge of the Indomitable was silent. They were staring at the view screen, trying to understand what they were seeing. Valaris Prime had been a beautiful planet. The intelligence reports showed cities that looked like artwork, with towers that spiraled into the sky and parks filled with gardens. The Valarians loved beauty. Every building was designed to be pleasing to the eye. Every street was lined with trees. That beauty was gone. Half the planet was covered in something that looked like black and purple tumors. Massive organic structures spread across the surface like cancer. They pulsed and writhed, growing larger with each passing moment. Between them, small shapes moved. Millions of them. The Krythax warriors, harvesting what remained of Valarian civilization. Captain Taiyang felt sick. But he pushed the feeling down. There would be time for emotions later. Right now, he had a job to do. Tactical report, he said calmly. Lieutenant Do-hyun worked his console quickly. Multiple hostile contacts. I'm reading over 300 Krythax bioships in orbit. Various sizes. The largest is approximately 2 kilometers long. Sensors show they're organic. Living ships, sir. What about the Valarians? I'm detecting life signs on the surface. Concentrated in what looks like the southern continent. Roughly 8 million signatures. They're grouped together, trapped. Do-hyun paused. Sir, I'm also detecting something else. Some kind of cocoon structures all over the planet. They're full of life signs too, but they're weak, fading. Taeyang's jaw tightened. The Krythax were keeping the Valarians alive while they slowly consumed them, like spiders wrapping up prey for later. The thought made his blood boil. Status of the other ships? The Guardian took heavy damage coming through the nebula. They've lost main power. The Mercy is helping them with repairs, but Defiant and Relentless are ready for combat. Taiyang stood up. Then let's not keep them waiting. All ships, battle stations. Prepare to engage. Across the fleet, alarms sounded. Soldiers grabbed their weapons. Medical teams prepped their stations. Engineers made sure every system was running at full power. Everyone knew what was coming. The Krythax noticed the human ships. Their bioships began moving, forming up in response to the threat. Chemical signals passed between them. If anyone could have translated those signals, they would have heard something simple. New food has arrived. The Krythax had never encountered resistance before. Every species they attacked either died quickly or was consumed slowly. Either way, they always won. They had no concept of defeat, no understanding of warfare. They simply consumed and moved on. They were about to learn something new. Taiyang opened a channel to all ships. This is Captain Taiyang. Our mission is simple. Protect the Valarians still alive on the surface, destroy any Krythax forces that threaten them, and rescue anyone we can from those cocoons. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. If it's not human and it's not Valarian, you may fire at will. He paused. The Krythax outnumber us 100 to 1. They've never lost a battle. They think we're just more prey. His voice grew harder. Let's teach them the difference between prey and predators. The human ships moved forward. The Krythax bioships rushed to meet them. They moved fast, twisting and turning in ways metal ships never could. They were alive, responding with instinct and hunger. They expected the humans to run or hide. All prey species did. The humans did neither. The Indomitable fired first. Railguns mounted along its hull launched tungsten rods at incredible speeds. The rods were simple, just metal cylinders, no explosives. No fancy technology, just mass and velocity. They hit the first Krythax bioship like hammers from God. The bioship tried to dodge, but it was too slow. 3 rods punched through its organic armor. The impacts were devastating. The bioship shuddered, fluid sprang from the wounds. It tried to regenerate, to heal itself, but the damage was too severe. A 4th rod hit its core, and the bioship simply came apart, pieces of it drifting in space. The Krythax had never seen anything like this. Most species used energy weapons, lasers, plasma beams. Things that burned but could be adapted to, could be resisted. Kinetic weapons were different. There was no adapting to a chunk of metal moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. It either hit you or it didn't, and if it hit you, you died. The Relentless and Defiant joined the attack. More railgun rounds filled the space between the fleets. Krythax bioships died 5, 10, 20. The humans fired with cold precision, each shot carefully aimed. Nothing was wasted. The Krythax responded with their own weapons. They fired organic projectiles, living missiles that sought out heat and movement. They sprayed acid that could melt through most hull materials. They tried to latch onto the human ships with tentacles, planning to breach the hulls and flood the insides with warrior forms. The human point defense systems shot down the organic missiles. The acid splashed harmlessly off armor designed to survive re-entry through a planet's atmosphere. And when the tentacles tried to latch on, the ships activated electric charges that ran through their hulls. The tentacles jerked and spasmed, releasing their grip. Captain Taeyang watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The Krythax were adapting quickly. They were trying new tactics, new approaches. They were learning. But humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had studied every battle in human history. They knew how to adapt faster. "Sir, a group of bioships is breaking off," Do-hyun reported. "They're heading for the surface, toward the Valerian survivors. Intercept them," Taeyang ordered. "Don't let them through." The Indomitable turned hard, its engines burning bright. It put itself between the Krythax bioships and the planet. The railguns fired again and again. 2 bioships died, 3. But there were too many. Some slipped past. "Launch dropships," Taeyang commanded. "Get our Marines on the ground. Protect those civilians." In the Marine Bay, Lieutenant Nari felt the ship shudder as dropships launched. She was in the lead ship, standing in the center of 40 Marines. All of them were in powered armor, heavy suits that made them stronger and faster. Each Marine carried enough firepower to level a building. "Listen up," Nari shouted over the roar of the engines. "We're going in hot. The Krythax have ground forces surrounding the Valerian civilians. Our job is to break through and create a defensive perimeter. Kill anything that's not human or Valerian. Move fast, shoot straight, and watch your corners." The dropship hit the atmosphere. It shook and rattled, flames licking at the windows. Through the viewport, Nari could see the surface rushing up to meet them. She could see the massive hive structures, the writhing masses of Krythax warriors, and in the center, huddled together, the Valerians. They looked terrified, helpless, waiting to die. "Not today," Nari thought. "Not while I'm here." The dropship touched down hard. The ramp dropped. Nari was the first one out, her rifle already firing. The Krythax warriors were like giant insects crossed with crabs. They had multiple legs, sharp claws, and armor plates that covered their bodies. They were fast and vicious. When they saw the humans, they charged without hesitation. Nari shot the first one in what looked like its head. The round punched through its armor and exploded inside. The warrior dropped, green blood sprang. She shot the second one, and the third. Her Marines spread out behind her, forming a firing line. The sound of human weapons was deafening. Rifles cracked. Machine guns roared. Grenades exploded. Each shot was designed to kill. There was no stun setting, no non-lethal option. These were weapons of war, created by a species that understood violence on a fundamental level. The Krythax warriors died by the dozens, but more kept coming. They poured out of the hive structures like water from a broken dam. For every one the Marines killed, 2 more appeared. "Fall back to the defensive position," Nari ordered. "Protect the civilians." The Marines moved as one, creating a wall of armored bodies between the Valerians and the Krythax. They fired continuously, never stopping. When their magazines ran empty, they loaded new ones in seconds. When their barrels grew hot, they swapped weapons with their partners. It was a dance they had practiced 1,000 times. Behind them, the Valerians watched in shock and horror. They had never seen violence before, never witnessed death on this scale. Many of them were crying. Some were screaming. But they were alive. One Valerian, a female named Yuna, pushed through the crowd. She approached Nari carefully. "You came," Yuna said. Her voice was soft, musical, even through the translator. "The council said no one would come. But you came." Nari didn't look away from the battle. She couldn't, but she answered. "Someone called for help. We answered. That's what we do. But why? You don't know us. We're nothing to you. Now Nari did look at her. Just for a second. You're people who need help. That's all we need to know. An explosion rocked the ground nearby. A Krythax warrior had gotten too close. One of the Marines threw a grenade. The warrior disappeared in fire and smoke. Yuna flinched. This violence, this death. Is this normal for your species? Yes, Nari said honestly. Our world was harsh, dangerous. We learned to fight or we died. But we also learned something else. We learned to fight for others. Not just ourselves. More dropships were landing now. More Marines joined EO. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. It floated in orbit above the planet Centrum, a neutral world chosen centuries ago when the 15 species first came together. The chamber was made of crystal that caught the light of the nearby star and split it into 1,000 colors. It was meant to be beautiful, a symbol of peace and unity. Today it felt like a cage. Ambassador Sora stood in the center of the chamber alone. Around her, projected in holographic light, were the representatives of the 15 council species. Each one looked different. Some were tall, some were small. Some had fur, some had scales, some had skin that glowed. But they all had one thing in common. They were all staring at her with a mixture of fear and anger. Council leader Pelgorath spoke first. He was a Zentarian, a species that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard. His voice was calm but firm. Ambassador Sora, we have received disturbing news. Your species intends to intervene in the Valaris Prime situation. Sora nodded. She had expected this. That's correct. We received their distress call. We're responding. You are aware that the Council has chosen not to intervene? Yes, and yet you proceed anyway. Do you understand what this means? You are defying the Council's decision. You are acting without authorization. Sora took a deep breath. She had prepared for this moment for days. She knew what she had to say. With respect, Council Leader, we're not defying you. We're simply answering a call for help. The Council chose not to respond. That's your right. But it's also our right to respond. One of the other Council members, a Peltharian named Thelanas, leaned forward. His species was known for being logical and cold. You don't understand the complexity of the situation. The Valerians are not Council members. If we intervene every time a non-member calls for help, we'll be at war constantly. We must maintain boundaries. Boundaries? Sora's voice was harder now. You're calling millions of deaths a boundary issue. We're calling it a tragic but necessary limitation, Thelanas replied. We cannot save everyone. We must save ourselves first, our own species, our own interests. Sora looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. Then you don't understand what civilization means, the chamber erupted. Multiple council members started talking at once, their voices rising in anger and confusion. Pelgorath raised his wing for silence. Ambassador Sora, he said slowly, you need to understand something. Humanity is young. You've only been in space for 150 years. That's nothing compared to our civilizations. We've been spacefaring for thousands of years. We know how the galaxy works. You don't. Then explain it to me, Sora said. Explain how watching people die is civilized. Explain how ignoring cries for help is advanced. Because from where I'm standing, it just looks like cowardice. The chamber went silent. No one had ever spoken to the council like this before. The council members looked at each other, uncertain how to respond. Another member spoke up. This was Krental, a Varinian whose species had been in the council the longest. Your species evolved on Earth, a Class 12 death world. Do you know what that means? I know what it means, Sora said. I don't think you do. It means your planet is one of the most dangerous in the known galaxy. High gravity, violent weather, predators everywhere, diseases that kill millions. Your species evolved fighting for survival every single day. That made you strong, but it also made you violent, aggressive, unable to see solutions beyond warfare. Krental's voice was almost sad now. We don't blame you for what you are, but we cannot allow your violence to spread across the galaxy. Every species you've encountered, you've eventually fought. Even your own kind, you've had thousands of wars on your own planet. How can we trust you to bring peace to others? Sora felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced it down. She needed to stay calm. You're right. We've had wars, many wars. But do you know why? No one answered. Because we believe some things are worth fighting for. Freedom, justice, life. When someone threatens those things, we fight back. Not because we like violence. but because we understand that sometimes violence is the only language evil understands. She looked at each council member in turn. The Valerians asked for help. You heard them. You all heard them. And you chose to do nothing. You hid behind rules and precedent and political concerns. But while you were debating, people were dying. Children were being consumed. Entire cities were being destroyed. And you did nothing. We did what was necessary to maintain galactic stability, Pelgorith said. No, Sora replied. You did what was convenient. There's a difference. The council leader's feathers ruffled in anger. We could sanction your species, cut off trade, deny you access to safe space routes, make you pariahs in the galactic community, Sora smiled. It was a cold smile. Then do it. We'll find other routes. We'll build our own trade networks. We'll survive. We always do. But the Valerians won't survive without help, and we're going to help them, even if it starts a war? Asked Delanus. We're not starting anything, Sora said. The Krythax started this war when they attacked a peaceful species. We're just finishing it, Pelgorith leaned back. He looked tired, old. You don't understand what you're doing. The Krythax swarm has never been defeated. They're too strong, too numerous. Your 5 ships won't make a difference. You'll just get your people killed. Maybe, Sora admitted, but at least we'll die trying to help someone. Can you say the same? The council had no answer for that. Sora continued, her voice softer now. I know you're afraid of us. I understand that. We're different from you. We're more aggressive, more willing to fight. But that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes the galaxy needs people who are willing to stand up to evil. Sometimes peace isn't enough. Sometimes you need warriors. Warriors without wisdom are dangerous, Krental said. And wisdom without courage is useless, Sora countered. The Valerians needed your wisdom, but more than that, they needed your courage. And you had none to give them. Pelgorith stood up, his form towering in the hologram. This conversation is over. Humanity will proceed with its mission. But know this, Ambassador. If your actions destabilize the region, if your violence spreads, if you become a threat to galactic peace, the Council will act. And you will not like the consequences. Sora nodded once. Understood. But know this, Council Leader. If you continue to ignore those who call for help, if you continue to hide behind your rules while innocents die, humanity will continue to act, with or without your approval. The holograms flickered and disappeared. Sora was alone in the chamber once more. She let out a long breath. Her hands were shaking. That had been the hardest thing she'd ever done. Standing up to the entire Galactic Council, defying beings whose civilizations were older than human recorded history. But it had to be done. Her communicator beeped. It was a message from Captain Taeyang. The fleet had jumped to FTL. They were on their way to Valaris Prime. There was no turning back now. Sora walked out of the council chamber and headed back to her ship. As she walked through the corridors of Centrum Station, other aliens moved away from her. They stared. They whispered. News of the confrontation had already spread. Humans were defying the council. Humans were going to war. Back on Earth, in the command center, General Park watched a recording of Sora's speech to the council. When it ended, he smiled. That's our girl, he said quietly. Admiral Chen nodded. The council is not going to forgive this. We've made enemies today. We've made enemies who were already afraid of us, General Park corrected. Now they're just more honest about it. I can work with that. He pulled up a star map showing the route to Valaris Prime. 5 green dots marked the human ships. They were moving through a region of space the Council called the Nightmare Nebula. It was filled with radiation storms, gravitational anomalies, and spatial distortions. Most species considered it impassable, but humans had mapped it years ago. They had lost 3 probe ships doing it, and the data had cost billions of dollars. But they had done it, because humans didn't believe in impassable. How long until they arrive? Admiral Chen asked. 36 hours. Will they make it in time? General Park didn't answer. He didn't know. None of them knew. On the Indomitable, Captain Taeyang sat in his command chair and watched the swirling chaos of faster-than-light travel through the view screen. The Nightmare Nebula was living up to its name. Twice already, they'd had to adjust course to avoid radiation bursts that would have fried their systems. Once, they'd passed so close to a gravity well that the ship had groaned and shuddered. But they were making progress. Lieutenant Do-hyun looked up from his station. Sir, we just received a transmission from the council. They're demanding we turn back. Ignore it, Taeyang said calmly. They're threatening sanctions, sir. I don't care if they're threatening to throw meteors at Earth. We have a mission. We're completing it. Do-hyun smiled. Yes, sir. In the Marine Bay, Lieutenant Nari was running her troops through combat drills. They practiced room clearing, hostage rescue, and defensive formations, over and over, until every movement was automatic, until they could do it in their sleep, because when they arrived at Valaris Prime, there would be no time for mistakes. One of her Marines, a woman named Park, asked a question during a break. Ma'am, what if the council is right? What if we can't win? The distress signal traveled through the darkness of space for 3 days before anyone heard it. It was weak, breaking apart into static every few seconds, but the words were clear enough. Someone was dying. Someone needed help. Jiwon sat at her station on the human research outpost called Horizon's Edge. She was the communications officer, which meant she listened to space all day. Most days, space was quiet, boring even. She listened to automated signals from cargo ships, weather reports from nearby colonies, and sometimes music from Earth that took months to reach her. But today was different. The signal came through on an old frequency, one that most species didn't use anymore. Jiwon almost missed it. She was drinking her coffee when the computer beeped. The sound was so soft that she nearly ignored it. But something made her look. The voice on the other end was not human. It was musical, like bells ringing in the wind. But the music was broken, terrified. This is Valaris Prime. We are under attack. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. We have no weapons. We have no defense. Please, anyone who can hear this, please help us. We do not want to die. Jiwon's coffee cup fell from her hand. It shattered on the floor, but she didn't notice. She was already recording the message, her fingers flying over the controls. She played it again, and again. Each time her stomach twisted tighter. The message repeated for 20 minutes. Then it stopped. Nothing but static remained. Jiwon ran to find Commander Hyunwoo. She found him in the observation deck looking out at the stars. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in the military for 30 years. He had seen a lot of things, but when Jiwon played him the message, his face went pale. Send it to Earth, he said quietly. Send it now. Jiwon nodded and ran back to her station. She transmitted the message to Earth's United Defense Command with the highest priority code. Then she waited. On Earth in the command center deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, generals and admirals gathered around a table. They listened to the Valerian message in silence. No one spoke for a long time. General Park was the first to break the silence. Do we know who they are? The Valerians, answered Admiral Chen, looking at her tablet. They're a peaceful species. No military. No weapons. They're artists, philosophers, scientists. They've never hurt anyone. And who's attacking them? The Krythak swarm, a parasitic species. They consume other civilizations completely. They take everything and leave nothing behind. General Park leaned back in his chair. Has the Galactic Council responded? Admiral Chen shook her head. The Council received the message 3 days ago. They're still debating. Debating? General Park's voice was sharp. People are dying and they're debating? The Valerians aren't Council members. Just a protectorate. The Council says intervention would set a bad precedent. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew what that meant. The Galactic Council, the union of 15 powerful alien species, was going to let the Valerians die. Politics was more important than lives. General Park stood up. His decision was made. Prepare a response fleet. 5 ships, Marines, medical teams, supply vessels. We leave in 48 hours. Admiral Chen looked surprised. Sir, the Council will object. They've made it clear they don't want us interfering in... I don't care what the Council wants, General Park interrupted. Someone sent a distress call. We're answering it. That's what we do. The room erupted into action. Orders were sent across the military networks. Ships were prepared. Soldiers were briefed. Within an hour, every human military base in the solar system knew they were going to war. On the carrier ship Indomitable, Captain Taeyang received his orders. He read them twice to make sure he understood. Then he called his senior staff to the bridge. Taeyang was young for a captain, only 35, but he had earned his position through skill and courage. His crew respected him. When he spoke, they listened. "We've received a mission," he said, looking at each officer in turn. "A species called the Valerians is under attack. They asked for help. The Galactic Council said no. We're saying yes." His tactical officer, Lieutenant Do-hyun, raised his hand. "Sir, do we know what we're facing?" "The Krithak swarm. Bioorganic ships. Parasitic species. They've never been defeated." Taeyang paused. "But they've never fought humans before." His crew was silent. They all understood what this meant. They were going into unknown danger, for people they'd never met, against an enemy that had never lost. "I won't order anyone to come," Taeyang continued. "This is volunteer only. If you want to transfer off this ship, now is the time. No one will think less of you. Nobody moved. Not a single person left their station." Taeyang smiled. It was a sad smile, but proud. "Then let's go save some lives." Deep in the ship, Lieutenant Nari was briefing her Marines. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but her soldiers were twice her size and they feared her. She had earned their respect in a dozen battles across human space. "Listen up," she barked, pacing in front of the assembled troops. "We're going to a place called Valaris Prime. The people there are peaceful. They don't fight. They don't even know how. And right now they're being slaughtered by something called the Krithaks." She pulled up a hologram. It showed images that Earth's intelligence had gathered. The Krithaks were nightmare creatures, all teeth and claws and organic armor. Their ships looked like they were grown, not built, with pulsing veins and bone-like structures. "These things consume civilizations," Nari continued. "They take everything. They leave nothing. They've destroyed dozens of species, and now they're going after the Valerians." One of her Marines, a big man named Jackson, raised his hand. "Ma'am, if they've destroyed dozens of species, how are we supposed to stop them?" Nari smiled. It was not a kind smile, because those species were peaceful. We're not. Those species had no experience with violence. We have thousands of years of it. Those species tried to reason with monsters. We know better. She looked at each soldier in turn. The Krithaks have never faced a species from a death world. They've never faced humans. They're about to learn why that's a mistake. The Marines cheered. It was a sound full of violence and determination. They were going to war and they were ready. Back on Horizon's edge, Jiwan stared at the empty frequency where the Valerian message had been. She hadn't heard anything new. No updates. No more calls for help. Just silence. She wondered if they were already dead. If the fleet would arrive to find nothing but empty cities and consumed populations. The thought made her sick. Commander Hyunwoo found her there, still listening to static. "The fleet launches tomorrow," he said gently. "They'll get there in time." "How do you know?" Jiwon asked. Her voice was small. Hyunwoo put a hand on her shoulder. "Because humans don't give up. We heard the call. We're answering. That has to mean something," Jiwon nodded. She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. In orbit above Earth, 5 ships prepared for departure. The Indomitable, the Defiant, the Relentless, the Guardian, and the Mercy. Each one carried soldiers, weapons, medical supplies, and something the Galactic Council didn't understand. Hope. The mission was simple. Save the Valerians, stop the Krithaks, show the galaxy that someone still answered when others called for help. As the fleet prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Captain Taeyang stood on his bridge and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying, but not for much longer. "All ships," he said calmly, "prepare for jump. Destination, Valaris Prime, mission, rescue and relief. Rules of engagement, protect the innocent at all costs." His crew acknowledged the orders. The engines hummed to life. Reality bent around the ships as they prepared to tear through space itself. Jump in 3, 2, 1, mark. The 5 ships vanished, leaving Earth behind. They were heading into danger. Into the unknown. Into a battle that might kill them all. But they were heading toward people who needed help. And for humans, that was all that mattered.